Welcome back to Epic Exchanges. You all wanted more stories by real people and real stories of inspiration that can encourage you in your life. So that's what we're bringing to you in 2025. And we're going to have some special I have such a hard time with this word. We're going to have some special topic driven series. And because February is the month of love and we're kicking this off in February, we're going to focus on that for the next few weeks, but with a bit of a twist. We're not talking romantic love. We are talking loving and choosing ourselves. And so you will hear a series of women sharing their stories of finding out how important it is to choose ourselves and take care of ourselves and discover self-love. And with that in mind, I am really excited to welcome Wendy Macdowall. And Wendy, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi. So I love this topic. When I first heard you said that choosing ourselves was your theme, that just spoke to me because that has been one of the most important things in my life. And it didn't come easy to me. So I really love to share about this topic. So I've been coaching, I'm a relationship coach. So I do work with romantic love, but also a big part of my coaching work is working with individuals to get connected to themselves. So I really um, absolutely love to talk about this. That's why I call myself the relationship nerd because I am a complete nerd about it. I will talk relationships with anybody for any reason for any length of time. But outside of that, I am a mom. I'm a book dragon. I love to read. And I just absolutely love to help people and just get seeing people connect with themselves is like magic. So I love what you're doing. Thank you.
Well, I love that because I believe that as we hear other people's stories, it brings up things about our own stories and we can connect more deeply and understand ourselves better. So that's why I'm all about story and I'm super excited to have you share your story with us. So why don't you dive in?
Sure. So, a little background, and it's funny because you would think that this is maybe one of the most important parts of my story, but it actually really isn't. But it's important to understand where I came from. I'm a survivor of domestic violence, myself and my three boys. And leaving my abusive ex husband marked a pivotal moment for all of us, for sure. But surprisingly, it didn't change my life as completely as I thought it might. Now, that decision, it was just agonizingly hard. It's shocking to me now, looking back, how much I put up with. He would be, just going on and on to me about how worthless I was, how no one else would ever want me, how miserable I made everyone around me, including my kids. And I believed that narrative. I thought everything was my fault. The relentless verbal and emotional abuse really dragged me down. Um, there was also a fair amount of trauma from physical abuse that happened, and that is something that it took me a long time to admit to myself. I minimized that so much, even to myself, that I don't really talk about it much. But ooh, it's funny that that's not what drove me to finally consider leaving him. I found out that he was cheating on me. And I'm so embarrassed by that, that's what made me first consider even standing up for myself, that all the rest of the stuff I accepted and I thought it was okay. But I did stand up for himself and I even left for a little while. But I took him back, hoping he'd finally value me after I'd been gone for a while. And well, his girlfriend had dumped him. So I thought, this is my time. He's going to realize what he was missing. And I know, I can just imagine all the people out there in YouTube land and wherever else you're hearing this, shaking their heads and going, what? What? Why would you do such a thing? And unless you've been in that type of situation, what I now know is a trauma bond. It doesn't make any sense. So if you're over there saying it makes no sense, you're right. But the reality is that being in abusive relationship like that actually changes your brain chemistry. There's a growing body of evidence that researchers have discovered that show that domestic abuse actually affects your brain in exactly the same way that being under fire in a war zone affects soldiers. You literally get PTSD from it, and it just really messes you up. So, next time you're confronted with someone who's making some really strange choices, maybe keep that in the back of your mind. But, after that happened, when I took him back, I was still kind of speaking up a little bit about what he was doing, that it wasn't okay. I'd kind of found my voice a little bit. And, um, instead of it bringing more abuse on me, what happened is he moved on to what he thought was gonna be an easier target. He started going after our oldest son. Um, so the day that he attacked our son, who at the time was 17, over a paycheck, I knew I had to leave for good. I'll never forget that day, and it was insane. Um, my son was working, and we had told him not to because he was still in school and we wanted him to focus on his grades. And he'd been bribing his brothers to pick up his paycheck out of the mailbox for him because they got home before he did and they missed it. And his dad found it. So he ripped open the thing and he's reading it and realizing that my son had been working, and he's just screaming at him. He's just absolutely ranting and raving. And my son, I remember standing there watching, feeling completely helpless because I knew that if I got in the middle of it, it was just going to ramp him up even more. And so I'm just standing there frozen. And my son, I watched him and he's getting angry, right? This isn't fair. It's not right. He's a teenager. And his hands started to ball up into little fists right by his sides. And I was just at this point completely panic stricken. I thought they're going to throw down, somebody's going to get seriously injured. I even had, panic stricken thoughts that maybe one of them's going to die right now. And I was completely useless in that moment, to be honest. But I remember seeing him, and his hands are clenched, and he looked down at his hands. And then he looked up at his dad, who was still just spewing. And then he did something completely amazing. I watched, and very, very deliberately, he loosed his hands and slowly, carefully, deliberately put them into his pockets. He made a choice that day, and he chose not to be violent. He chose not to give in to the anger, not to add to the escalation. And unfortunately for him, his dad didn't make that choice and things did escalate. And so my middle son ended up calling the police. Their dad got arrested, and that's when I filed for divorce. Um, so that was definitely a critical moment. But the thing that I remember most from that day is the strength that my son had, and the commitment and the courage to just be himself and choose who he was going to be in that moment. So, a little bit after that, as we're going through the divorce process, I ended up in a situation that I felt obligated to go to couples counseling with this man. I know. I knew it was pointless, but I had promised him over the 20 years we were together multiple times, hey, we should try counseling, we should try therapy. I didn't realize then that in that kind of relationship, that's not really helpful. But I had always told him, if you will go, I will show up anytime, anywhere, I promise. And I don't make promises lightly. So I felt really torn because I thought I need to do this thing because I said I would. So I went, and it went about how you would expect. It was a complete waste of time. And as I was on the way home that day, I was just really fighting with myself because I didn't want to do any more of it. I knew I was done with this situation. I knew I could never go back to him. It was a complete waste of time. And I wanted free from that promise, but I just didn't know how to do it. So I was just like this, I'm driving along, but I'm like, I need a sign. And lo and behold, almost immediately on the right-hand side of the road, there was a sign, big plywood handmade sign that somebody had made for their business. We quit after 20 years. Got it. That's kind of the moment I realized, yeah, it's okay to let this go. So life did get a lot better. And I tell that part of the story because it's important because it kind of sets me up for what is to come. But the really big change didn't happen till later. So we were bumping along and we had a lot more peace in the house. Things were definitely better, but I was definitely not out of the woods yet. So 5 years later, I was on the verge of remarrying, and I was completely shocked to discover, as I was contemplating this marriage, that despair had become my constant companion in this relationship once again. So I wasn't sure what to do. Again, I kind of had boxed myself in. I felt like, well, I've put so much into it. I told myself all the lies that people tell themselves. And I just wasn't understanding what to do. I hadn't really healed the part of me that was a victim. So even though I had escaped that abusive relationship, I hadn't really done a lot of work on my own end of it. So what kind of brought this home to me is I had a little bit of a medical emergency. My heart just randomly one day just started beating really fast. It was pounding in my chest. It felt like I was just going to jump right out of it. And this had never happened to me before, and I was completely freaked out. So I went to him and I said, "Hey, this is happening to me, this thing, and it's crazy and it's weird and it's freaking me out. And I think I need to go to the hospital." And he just kind of looked at me, huh? And he shrugged and he said, "Well, it's probably nothing. Just, let me know if it gets worse." And he just walked away. I was like, oh. And it never occurred to me then that I could just say, "I want to go to the hospital. Could you take me, please?" You know, just not even on my radar. But I do remember that it cut me to the core that he didn't seem to care at all. And looking back, I can say I shouldn't have had to ask. I felt more alone with him than I did by myself.
Mm.
And so it got really bad. I was crying every day. I felt damaged. I felt broken. I thought I escaped from this abusive relationship and now I'm in this one with this relatively normal guy. And even he can't be bothered. Like, I assumed it had something to do with me and that there was something wrong with me. And I remember a moment where things were really dark and I was rocking myself with my knees tucked up under my chin and just tears streaming down my face, trying to figure out why. Why is it like this? What is going on? What is wrong with me? What is wrong with him? And I really wanted to give up. Like give up, give up. But I remembered my son's courage in that moment. It came to me. I remembered him making that choice. And I just couldn't let all that had happened be wasted. I couldn't let that experience for him be wasted. And so I decided to change. I decided to do something different. That's the moment I really, truly chose me. I invested in myself so I could truly heal. I got with a therapist. It took me 3 tries to get a good fit, but I didn't give up. I started taking classes. I read books. I wanted to know everything I possibly could about how relationships are supposed to work. What does a good relationship look like? How do you even get one? Because clearly I had no clue. Um, so I even took a long weekend away after working with a relationship coach myself. I took a week away and I just sat with all of my deepest feelings. I reflected, I journaled, I really came to grips with my own role in my unhappiness. And I realized that this particular person and I wanted very different things in a relationship. Um, I wanted someone that I could connect with on a very deep level, almost a spiritual level. I wanted someone who wanted to know everything about me and I could know everything about them. And I was accepting less than that. And so he wanted something simple and uncomplicated. And he wanted to maintain his independence, which there's nothing wrong with that. But it definitely was not what I was looking for. So I remember that billboard that said, "We quit after 20 years." And I thought to myself, I'm not giving this one 20 years. This is not going to work. And I know it. I have to do something about it. So I chose to end that relationship. And then this time it wasn't out of fear. It wasn't out of necessity. It wasn't out of panic. but out of love. We both deserved something different, something that we really wanted. So, on trembling knees, I gave myself permission to overcome the story of not good enough that had kept me stuck and kept me choosing things that weren't right for me. And I chose me. I chose to be me. And I made that a way of life for myself. And wouldn't you know it, this will come as no surprise to you. Amazing things just started to happen. My husband, the man I'm married to now, just sort of appeared. I was definitely not looking for a relationship. I was kind of over it. And I still thought, oh, I need to do so much healing work. I need to focus on me. I don't want anything to do with anybody else. Um, and we learned together that you can, when both of you are really committed to it, actually do a lot deeper healing and growth when you do it together in partnership. And he supported me in my journey to become a coach. I took the next level of training so that I myself could coach other people. And I've never looked back. I wake up every single day excited for what's coming. I work with, or I do a job that I absolutely love. I work with people who inspire me every day. I travel. I can work from anywhere, so I travel as I please. Uh, Rob and I actually got married in Scotland because why not? And the craziest thing, see the smile? You would never see that. You look at pictures of me before, there's not a single picture where I'm smiling big with my teeth or anything. If anything, you're getting the little Mona Lisa smile, right? Um, I experience joy regularly, pretty much every day in some level. And what's really fun is I even get to come on podcasts like this and tell my story. Um, so I am living not happily ever after, but I call it everything ever after because in this relationship, I have chosen and I get to be me, completely and utterly me. I don't ever have to pretend. And that has changed everything. So that's my story. That's how I got here with you.
Wow. There's, I feel like I say this a lot after people share their stories with me. It's like, there's so much I want to go back to. There's so much I want to know more about. But one of the things that struck me, and when we chatted last week, it struck me then too. It's that billboard moment because I think we've all
Mhm.
had that desire for our own billboard moment. I know I have, and I've regularly asked the universe, God, whoever, you're asking for direction, like just give me a billboard on the side of the street and tell me which choice is right. Tell me what to do. Like that's what I want. So since I know I'm not alone and you had
Mhm.
this billboard moment, what would you tell the listener or the viewer on YouTube or anybody coming across anything on the internet that is looking for their own sign about how to create their own sign, how to stop looking, whatever. What's the advice you would give to someone that's looking for that?
So yeah, I think don't wait for it. Um, if you have it in you, if you have something that you feel like you need a sign about, maybe trust yourself a little bit. But if you really do, if you're on the fence and you really need a sign, ask for it and then be open to how it comes because it will be there. I believe that. I've seen it. Um, trust yourself first, but be open to what comes. If you really open yourself to it, if you really reach out with just a really open and pure want to make things better, you'll get what you need to make that happen, one way or another.
Another thing that struck me as you were sharing your story just
Mhm.
now, um, you mentioned the incident with your son as he loosed his hands and put his hands in his pocket, and uh, the impact that it had on you. And yes, you saw him making a choice, but there's a part of me that goes, well, if that was your first step, it was almost like instead of choosing the marriage and the commitment you'd made to your husband, you were choosing your son because you were seeing the effect. And then you get the billboard, and it feels a little bit like maybe you were choosing what was right for you. and
Mhm.
what that inner knowing was telling you, or that the commitment to whatever the world is telling us we should do or be, as a wife, as a mother, as whatever title we put on ourselves, or what we think we should do or be,
Mhm.
might not be the truth. And then when you were at risk with your heart palpitations, racing heart, and everything, and you realized that your then husband wasn't making you a priority, wasn't choosing you, felt like, oh, there was a moment there where it was like, oh, he's not choosing me. Who's going to choose me? I can choose me. That's that, like, if we're
Yeah, yeah,
staying on
that's it
this
exactly.
what we're choosing theme, and it just felt like that progression. So, how would you say knowing yourself
Mhm.
and knowing, even paying attention to the inner knowing of, um, I can choose me, or I'm important too. um, how does that change your relationship with others? And that could be any others, your children, your coworkers, your partner, your friends.
It's funny that you asked that because that's something I've been thinking a lot about lately. And it kind of creeps up on you, while you're busy taking care of you and realizing that that's okay. Because that was the critical difference there is, yes, I did choose me, but it was because I needed to for other people, for my son, for whatever, right? And so it was that moment of it's okay to choose me just for me, right? And then once I did that, I kind of had to realize, okay, if I'm going to choose me, that means I have to take responsibility for all of this. I have to step into that and really own my life. If I'm going to choose me, that means I'm in charge of it. It's kind of like when you buy a house, if you're renting and something goes wrong, you can call the landlord. But when you buy a house, if something goes wrong, you got to fix it. And so I've started to develop over the last 5 years, I think really is how long it's been since I've really, really sank into this, an extreme kind of ownership of my life. And that has had great dividends for everybody else in my life because I'm not blaming folks for stuff anymore, even, and I'm not saying I'm taking responsibility for their behavior. No, thank you. But I get to choose how I respond to it. I get a choice about what I do about it every single time. And so I step into that power of choice and that ability to choose. And it's actually become a mission for me. Um, I was at a job that I was working at. I ended up actually writing a mission statement. They had us in a little training seminar write a personal mission statement as if our life was our job. And that's kind of what came up for me is owning the power that I have to choose to create the life that I wanted. And as part of that mission is inspiring other people to know that they can do the same thing. That's actually written down in there. So that's why I do what I do. And it's so much fun. And the people that I'm closest to definitely appreciate that I am a lot more open to hearing what's going on for them. I'm more curious. I'm more engaged. I question my own assumptions because a lot of those assumptions that I make about people come from all of that back history of being treated awfully. And not everyone is awful, you know? So if I find myself kind of knee jerk reacting to someone, maybe they're, feeling a little withdrawn or whatever. I used to make up stories that, oh gosh, they hate me. Oh, they're going to be just like that abusive person, all of that. And now I don't automatically go there. And if I do, I know to check it. Like, wait, that could be my intuition and I should pay attention. But let me get curious and find out what's really going on for that person. And so I'm able to, the vast majority of the time figure that out and know, hey, no, this person's withdrawing because they're feeling hurt and I can do something about that. Or, yeah, they really do hate me. Okay, good to know. I just won't interact with that person anymore. No problem. But it's
I
just
yeah.
huge growth for me in that. And it's trickled down to every relationship I have.
I love that you use the word curiosity or being curious, because I think that that changes so much in us, how we perceive a situation, a person, or anything. But it does lead me, that whole discussion, to my next question about or next observation maybe, was that you talked about um, never feeling good enough and things. And what that led me to think about is that part of knowing ourselves and choosing ourselves is realizing that we don't get our worth from others, or we don't need to get our worth from others, that we can that it's important for us to find it in ourselves. So I would love for you to offer a tip or two to our listeners about where they can start if they don't know what brings them joy, or they don't know how to pay attention to that inner knowing and to choose themselves. Where would you suggest people start?
I think take time, get away and just sit with yourself and have that conversation. Like go deep. Just think about, okay, what am I feeling? A lot of times we run away from our feelings. They can be really intense. They can be really scary. We get a lot of judgment out in the world. Don't be so emotional. You're too this, you're too that. And so we tend to kind of push down, especially the ones that aren't, cute and lovey dovey. Oh, I'm really sad. Oh, I'm angry. We tend to oh, oh no, I'm angry, push that away. And the more we can embrace those and really connect to what our emotions have to tell us, because none of them there's no such thing as a negative emotion. It's all just information. And it's how you know what's really going on with you. It's kind of the bridge between your subconscious and your conscious mind is your emotions. And so you want to carve out time to really listen and get to know your emotions. I work with mine almost as if they were separate from myself, like they're beings in their own right. And I do a lot of work with my clients that way. That I just sit down and kind of have them get in a quiet place and just sit with and have a conversation with. Hey, sadness, what's going on? What are you trying to tell me? I'm not trying to get rid of you. We're cool. You don't need to push hard and make me pay attention because I'm listening. Because I feel like that's what happens when we try and push our emotions away. They're going to do anything and everything to get us to pay attention. And sometimes that can be really rough. It makes sense. If you're trying to kill something, it's going to fight really hard to stay alive. So
Right.
that connection with your own emotions is going to tell you so much about who you are and what you need and what you want and what's important to you.
So embrace the emotions, whatever they are, and be curious. What causes them? What leads to them? Um, I'm just trying to figure out oh yeah. So a lot of people who are listening will probably think, oh, I don't need relationship advice. I don't need to work on my relationship with myself or anybody else, because they maybe haven't experienced all you've experienced. And I like to say that we often take our own stories, and when we hear someone else their story, we think, oh, I admire them so much. It takes so much courage. It takes so much resilience, all of these things, because we've normalized our own stories and we don't see the impact of our own stories. So how could someone count themselves in to being worth working on their relationship with others, but most importantly with themselves?
Um, I think it's really comes down to being honest with yourself. If you don't wake up every single day excited about your life, you deserve more than that. If that is the bar. And I think we have this kind of idea, especially unfortunately as women, that we don't count that being joyful and excited and loving every bit of our life isn't necessary. It isn't important. As long as we're getting by, that's okay. And it's, survival is great. That's obviously our first job, but there's so much more available to you. So if you do not wake up every single day excited about your life, even if it's hard, even when things are going wrong. Trust me, things still go wrong in my life. I wish I had the magic wand that didn't make that. Actually, no, I don't. We grow through the hard things, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. But honestly, even when things are at their toughest, I still wake up excited for the day. That's the bar. And if you're not there yet, get support, figure out what you need to do, and get there because you deserve it.
perfect way to wrap our chat up. But if people want to reach out to you, if they want to know more, if they want to start on this journey, can we share your links? Is it okay for them to reach out to you?
Absolutely. I am all over every social media imaginable as the relationship nerd. I try to keep it simple, streamlined. It's the relationship nerd no matter where you go. My website is therelationshipnerd.com. And my company is actually called TRN Coaching, but neither here nor there. If you just want to reach out to me directly, that's perfectly fine too. You can email me. It's Wendy at therelationshipnerd.com, and I will respond to those as quickly as I can. So whatever way I can help people, that's what I'm here for. That's my mission.
Perfect. And we will be sure to share all those links in our show notes. So check them below the video or in the wherever you're getting the podcast and on our socials, and we'll make sure that you're connected. Thank you so much, Wendy, for sharing your
Thank
story with
you.
us
Thank you, Kelly.
and helping to encourage us all to choose ourselves.
It's important. It's probably the most important choice you're going to make. So do it. Choose you.